Hello and welcome to another off-week bonus episode for Read Brave, a comics podcast. This week we have yet another Crisis on Infinite podcast, where Alastair, Sarah, and I will be discussing Captain America Civil War, this time after having seen the film. So beware, there will be spoilers. Until our full episode next week, remember to check out readbrave.com.
Hey everybody, and welcome to Crisis on Infinite podcast. I'm Sarah Cade.
I'm Vinton Bayne.
And I'm Alastair Stephens.
And this month, I guess we are doing it like every month now.
So far, yeah.
Excellent.
That's how it's shaking out.
Awesome.
Yeah.
We are covering Captain America Civil War. And I think we all have a lot of feelings and opinions.
There are a lot of things to be said.
Yes.
Yes.
Who wants to go first? Because otherwise I'm just going to be shrieking the entire time.
So, I loved it, obviously. I think we all probably enjoyed it. Mm-hmm. But I actually, last night I started looking up things and trying to get some opinions for the negative side of things, because I'm like, I can't be so positive about this movie.
Well, I don't know. I feel like, why? Why?
I just didn't want us all to just be like, it was great, it was amazing, go see it. And then everyone be like, it was okay. You guys talked it up a lot, though, and there's some plot holes here. And
Okay. Well, that's fair, I guess.
Yeah, there's some plot stuff. There's some structural stuff that I find really interesting about the movie. It's not necessarily structurally flawed, but it makes some structural choices that I think are not necessarily the choices I would have made, and they're interesting to discuss. The way that the movie refocuses the central conflict as we move from the first act into the second and then into the third. The way that it is two films fundamentally smashed into each other. This is Captain America Civil War and Avengers 2.5 Civil War at the same time. And also, I'm just going to throw this out here because I cannot contain my excitement a moment longer. Also, maybe the best Spider-Man movie I have ever seen.
yes, I agree.
How good, Vinton, as our resident Spider-Manologist.
I'm making you business cards as soon as we're done with this call. I swear.
No kidding. What did you make of this vision of Peter Parker?
So in my mind, it was perfect. And I guess if I'm going to address this, most people were happy with it, but most people also had one complaint, and I don't get this complaint, and it drives me crazy, which is that Aunt May was too young and too hot. He's 15, and his Aunt May is in her mid-50s. That's a 40-year age difference. How much older do you want her than him? That's pretty old comparison-wise.
Yeah, no, I think you're entirely right. I'm not sure it's a valid comparison, though, ages in the Marvel Universe don't necessarily make a lot of sense. I'm still trying to wrap my mind around Howard Stark. I'm not sure how old he's supposed to be. I am completely with you. I thought that Peter Parker was fantastic, was a revelation. Everything that I was worried about before the movie came out, everything that we were concerned about from the trailer, wasn't just effortlessly dismissed. This is my favorite version of Peter Parker that I have ever seen on screen anywhere, portrayed by anyone. It was great. We got super genius Peter Parker. We got Stark Tech. We got the quips. We got the insecurity. We got the teen from Queens. It's just great. Sarah, how did he work for you?
It worked so the first time that we saw this, Vinton and I went and saw it at 12 p.m. on a Friday, and there was, I think, nobody else in the theater. I think there was one other dude.
Yeah, everyone was at work, apparently.
Yes, because that's what normal people do on Friday, is we go see Marvel movies. But I could not help but just be filled, overjoyed with the Spider-Man that was on screen, because I kept looking at Vinton and going, this is you! You literally are Peter Parker.
Which made me so excited.
Yes, it was. I thought that, what is his name?
Tom Holland?
Tom Holland. Tom Holland? Tom Holland.
Holland?
Yes, I think
there's
that sounds good. I thought you said Collins, and I was he's named after a drink. But no, I thought that Tom Holland did an excellent job. I loved that he said, with great power comes with great responsibility, without actually saying those words.
He inferred it.
Yes, quite. And I just loved him. It made me so happy to see, like you were saying, with the quips and the attitude and the insecurity, just all of it. I completely agree with you, Alastair. It is the best Spider-Man I have ever seen, and I am so stoked for his film.
Yeah, I could not be happier. And this is the Spider-Man I've been waiting for since I was a kid. Since I first saw Spider-Man, I was like, well, that was really great. There's a bunch of problems, but that was really great. I'm glad that Spider-Man's on the screen and I can watch him. But now he's the young Peter Parker that we've always wanted. And I even really like when he comes back and he's having to lie to his aunt. He's like, oh, this guy hit me. What was his name? Steve?
Steve.
No, not that Steve.
And there was another guy. He was huge.
Yeah, this kid from Brooklyn. This other guy was huge. It's just so perfect.
And that speaks to me to what is the greatest strength of the movie and something that we've come to expect from Christopher Marcus and from Stephen McFeely. All this action, all this conflict, all this high octane, MCU adventure is always grounded in these personal character moments. I just love it. My favorite fight scene, my favorite action sequence is actually Spider-Man and Bucky and Sam.
Oh my gosh,
inside the airport terminal.
Yeah. You couldn't have done that to him earlier? I hate you.
Yeah. I don't know if you've ever been in the fight, kid, but there's usually not this much talking.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. Yeah. Oh my gosh, he was.
Yeah. Are those carbon fiber? Because that would explain the flexibility.
Yeah, he's just nerding out.
So good.
You have a metal arm? That's
Dude,
so
awesome.
cool.
Yeah, it was. He was such a delight to watch.
I do have to say, I am 100% happy. This isn't a complaint. I'm perfectly okay with the fact that they just shoehorned him in there for no reason. There is no reason for Spider-Man to be in this movie, except for they want to put Spider-Man in this movie.
If they can continue to make that decision pretty much in every Marvel movie from here on out, and I'll be good with it. Yeah.
Should we just go through? I mean, like just from start to finish. Now that we got, I guess. Or we can talk about.
Around. I mean, we can try.
Yeah, we can also jump around. Well, let's talk about Black Panther, the other character who is introduced, who was a new player this time around. I thought T'Challa was amazing. I knew literally nothing about Black Panther going into this film, and he just absolutely won me over and charmed me. I thought that his character was really compelling. His suit is awesome. Like, I loved the design on that suit. It was so cool. And genuinely enjoyed like just every scene that he was in. It was really nice to have somebody who wasn't a part of the family feud going on, but like is a part of the action and all of that. What did you guys think?
I feel like this is the best origin film for a superhero movie ever. Because you get him in there and you get his whole origin without it being like bogged down in this like immense detail. It's just like, hey, look, he's a king now because his dad died, and he's also a warrior. And go.
Yeah, we didn't have to spend like 45
that was awesome. Now we're set up for the Black Panther movie. We don't have to go over an origin.
Exactly.
He's there.
Didn't have to spend half an hour of T'Challa just like being sad and grumpy.
Yeah, because Black Panther is kind of like Black Panther 1.5.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I thought it worked great. I thought that Chadwick Boseman was excellent. So much charisma.
He's so good.
It's just impossible to look away from him. You're absolutely right. I think the suit is great, and that suit was a challenge. Real easy to make that suit look dumb.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
But they didn't. They made it look awesome. And it complemented so nicely his particular movement and motion. When I was watching the fight choreography through the airport sequence, which I guess is our big marquee performance in the movie, watching the way T'Challa moves, watching the way he fights, it's incredible. They've brought this fully realized character to screen. And Vinton's absolutely right. Introduced him with the bare minimum, but with everything necessary. Yeah. And then just set him forth on his route. That really worked for me. I guess maybe if I have a criticism about Black Panther, it's the criticism that I have about the movie and superhero movies and I guess stories in modern fiction, which is, do we need to motivate every character with the death of a parent?
Well, that's the only way that you're allowed to become a superhero.
Only story?
Well, I mean, his dad either had to have been dead before. Well, I guess they could have just changed the comics, but he is supposed to be king. So.
Oh my gosh. Okay, and that drove me crazy because here I know nothing about monarchy systems or whatever, but the one thing I do know is that when you are a king, you are referred to as Your Majesty, not Your Highness, and it happened twice in this movie, and it drove me crazy both times. I was like, okay, Rhodey maybe could get away with this. Natasha knows better. Natasha Romanoff knows better than to look at him and say, Your Highness, at this point. Yeah. So that, it killed me.
What bothers, I think, most people that have that similar problem of being like, well, he's a king, they're actually thinking, well, he's a king. Why is he also a warrior? And why is he over here fighting? He should be leading a country.
That's also fair.
Which
That's
is
a fair point.
A good question on the comics as well. We were having this discussion on Free Comic Book Day with some of the people that were dressed up. One of the guys was dressed up as Black Panther, and we were talking to him, and he knows a lot about the character. So we were just having this actual discussion about how he has to do everything. There's no one else in this country that does anything, apparently. He sits on a throne that he made and takes medicine that he makes because he's also the chemist, and he also officiates his own wedding, and he has to sign his own divorce papers from Storm. It's like he does everything. He's everything there. No one else does anything, lifts a finger. He just lets them wander around while he takes care of everything.
Are you telling me that Wakanda is actually just the sovereign nation of T'Challa?
Yeah.
And that's it?
I couldn't believe it. It's a very, very small country. Real small country.
The funniest moment that came out of that was that he also would put on the mask or whatever and sing Lion King songs, and it was the best thing ever. When the guy dressed up as Black Panther was singing Lion King songs, I just can't wait to be king.
I thought you meant the actual Black Panther, and I got so confused.
Nope, my friend that was dressed up as Black Panther.
Okay, I was like, well, they're both owned by Disney, so...
And if you want to see a video of it, check out my Instagram. It's the same as my Twitter, @FleshDude. I took a video of him singing I Just Can't Wait to Be King, and it's my favorite thing. I've watched it like 30 times now.
Okay. I might be distracted for the next couple minutes, guys, but we can push on with the podcast. It's so great and such a great character introduction. And you know, King T'Chaka, also fantastic. Also that presence, that gravitas, a great addition to the MCU. And I like that we even get, you know, this minor nod toward consistency. Well, Wakanda's been really insular for too long now, and it's time that we took our place on the world stage. That's why you haven't mentioned us in any of the preceding 8 movies. It really worked for me. You're right. The introduction of those two characters is just a startling accomplishment. To do one of those characters well, either Black Panther or Peter Parker, would have been great. To do both is just a magnificent accomplishment. It does slightly complicate our sense of the story that we're being told, I guess, because neither of those characters really Captain America characters.
Right.
You know, they're not really in the Steve Rogers side of the story. And I think I kind of want to segue and talk about Wanda.
Yes.
I want to talk about how magnificent Wanda is and how poorly the story serves her in its final movie.
Yes.
Because we set up this entire thing. It's Wanda's story. She is the inciting incident. It is her fault that we have all of this international attention focused on the Avengers because of the events in Lagos. We have this terrible guilt, this burden that she's carrying around, a character who is already guilt-ridden and burdened with responsibility and shame. Then we move through the story and we turn it into Cap and Tony and Bucky, and we don't get a satisfying resolution for Wanda's arc. Sarah, as if Vinton is our premier Spider-Manologist, you are clearly the expert on the Scarlet Witch. How did you feel Wanda was represented in the movie?
The first time viewing it, I was just so pleased that she got so much screen time, because I honestly was not expecting that at all. I was actually very pleased with how much screen time all of our secondary and even tertiary characters got. Like, I was really legitimately surprised. And then it was funny at the end of the movie. I was like, well, I wanted more of them and way less of Captain America, even though it's technically like a Captain America movie, I guess.
Yeah.
But no, I completely agree. They gave Wanda an arc, which was really, really excellent. It was wonderful being able to see it was so great being able to see her grow, because I think it would have been it would have been really easy for them to say, okay, so we've got Wanda and she's a little crazy. She lost her brother. She lost her city. She lost all of this. And so, you know, we're just going to keep her like on the bench and not getting anything done. But it's obvious that like Cap has been spending time with her. She's like a part of this team now and is like growing into her capabilities and into her powers. And then to be able to see just the devastation on her face after she, you know, stops Crossbones and then ends up destroying that apartment building, I guess it was. It's never really kind of specified. Something with it. And to see all of that, and then, you know, we see her in her room, like watching the news and telling Steve, you know, it is my fault. And he's like, well, it's not your fault. And she's like, no, watch the TV. They're being very specific. You know, we get Clint shows up and tells her, you know, you want to be moody, you can go to high school. If you want to make amends, you got to get off your ass, which I loved.
Daddy Hawkeye showing up and bringing in the guidance.
Yes. Thank you, Daddy Hawkeye. And then, you know, we see just the ridiculous amount of control she has developed over her powers during the entire airport scene. I mean, that girl, like, it's ridiculous.
Even before that, with Vision, she was just like, and I'm doing this, throwing you through like 30 floors of a building.
And let me just control your density via the mind gem embedded in your body. This is how wicked powerful I am now. And that was so heartbreaking,
because you could like see it in her eyes. She didn't want to have to do that. And then afterwards, she looks down, you can almost just like feel her like breaking on the inside for what she just did. Yes.
The entire scene with Wanda and Vision in the kitchen is absolutely one of my favorites. He's trying to make the paprikash for her. And then she's like, you know, it ends up not working out, and they're talking about fear and discussing discussing all of it. Wanda, no one dislikes you.
Thanks.
Thank you. I love the Vision now more than I ever thought I would love a purple synthezoid. He's so great.
They won me over with the Vision. They won me over with Hawkeye, not a character I was previously hugely invested in. I thought he was really great here. I like him in that outsider role. I don't know why. I guess the last act of Age of Ultron worked for me. The stuff between Hawkeye and Wanda specifically really worked for me. But in this movie, he was there. He showed up. The ability of this film to make me care about characters that I didn't previously care about is astonishing. We can talk about Ant-Man later.
Yeah, right. So anyways, we get that whole scene in the kitchen, and you're exactly right. Like, we're building up, like, what can be this really excellent story for Wanda, and it turns out really, really, like, they do a really great job 2/3 the way through, and then, hey, what do we do with this reality-altering witch? Let's just throw her into a solitary confinement and into a straitjacket, and we're just not going to deal with her.
And just have a few scenes of her looking really broken.
Real broken, yeah.
But... And I'm hoping what they are planning here, and I'm not saying it's a good idea, but what I'm hoping what they did was they were like, okay, and we're going to cover what the aftermath of all that is in another film.
Right.
We're going to focus on her later, but this is Captain America's film. We got to focus on him now. We'll leave her where she is. So I almost feel like the movie should have ended not with Spider-Man will return, but Scarlet Witch will return. Like at that point, when they take her out of the film, be like, Scarlet Witch will return and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. Yeah, so...
Yeah, it would be great to see that perspective, that story told. Would be awesome. Looking at the slate of Marvel movies, I'm not sure when we get that. I like the idea of Infinity War Part 1 being the let's bring the team back together story. You know, in the face of overwhelming interstellar cosmic odds, we'll reunite the Avengers and save the Earth. I like that. I don't really like the idea of Wanda being on the back burner between now and then.
Like,
that's a lot of time.
Because, okay, if at the end of the film, Steve goes to get everybody, I'm assuming that he's going to break Wanda out also. I mean, like, they...
Yeah, of course.
I love their relationship in this film.
She was... Cap was really upset when she was confined to the house by Tony Stark. He's not going to let her sit in a jail cell.
Right, exactly. So now she's just palling around with the Secret Avengers, I guess, and becoming... I mean, I think that we've gotten past... Because it would have been really easy to have Wanda be in this situation where, like, everything from the events of Age of Ultron just totally broke her, and she was just basically useless. But I think that she's gotten to the point now, and especially with Daddy Hawk there, to be able to, like, pat her on the back and say, get off your ass, let's go, that she is just going to be more powerful than ever before. And with the addition of Doctor Strange now into the MCU, like, mysticism and magic is about to be like a big deal.
That's true.
So hopefully we'll get to see some of, like, just the reality altering craziness that is Wanda Maximoff, and I'm super excited.
Yeah, I'm really wondering what they're going to do to lead up into these upcoming movies, because it does seem like there's a lot of things that they could do before that, and it almost feels a little rushed to me, because you mentioned she's in this quote-unquote Secret Avengers now. In the comics, that's how the Civil War ends, is that Captain America puts together the Secret Avengers under the government radar, who are kind of fugitives. And that seems to be where this movie ended, that he's now in Wakanda, assumingly with the other guys. They're all there.
Right.
Because they're on the run, basically, but they're still going to be heroes, so they're technically the Secret Avengers. But we don't have a movie for that upcoming. We just have the movie where they get back together. So there's this whole time where they could be running around saving people, and maybe that's
any of that.
My only guess is that, like, the Black Panther movie and a few other movies that they're doing between now and then are going to be like this Captain America movie, where they're going to have a bunch of other characters show up in it.
Yeah. The Black Panther, I think, is going to be the movie that's going to be our introduction. It's probably going to act as a prologue to Avengers Infinity War. They're going to rename those films now, so I need to be aware that I have to stop calling them Infinity War Part 1 and 2. Yeah, I think there was a news story that they're going to, instead of being Part 1 and Part 2 of Infinity War, they're going to have individual titles, which means that we might end up the Avengers, Infinity War,
Avengers Secret Wars on the first one. Or not Secret Wars.
That would...
Avengers, Infinity War, Secret Avengers.
Yeah, Secret Avengers.
Woof.
It could be. Yeah, that would be a really interesting
Infinity
direction.
War. We brought literally every actor in Hollywood in this one. Good luck. It's 6 hours long.
There are no stars in the night sky because all the stars are in our movie. We're looking at the slate now of Doctor Strange is coming up later this year, which I think is almost necessarily going to be a self-contained movie.
There hasn't been any hint of there being anyone else showing up, but if there is, it's probably going to be like in the last scene type thing.
Right.
Then we've got Guardians, which I think Guardians 2 is going to conclude with, I can only imagine, a foreshadowing of Thanos coming to Earth.
I can't imagine that delving too deep into anything else other than ending with a foreshadowing.
Right.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. Then we've got Spider-Man Homecoming. We know that Tony Stark is going to appear in the Spider-Man movie, so we'll get some continuity there. But that, again, has to be a self-contained story. Thor Ragnarok is going to be Thor and the Hulk, tearing through the cosmos.
Yeah, that's where they took them to. That's why neither of them were in this movie.
Yeah.
Because they were going to put the Hulk in this movie, just in like tangentially, like, oh, he's off here doing this.
But then they
thing.
realized there's no way.
Well, they weren't going to have him fight. They were just going to be like, hey, he's off here doing this thing. And they're like, well, no, he's going to be Ragnarok. Let's leave him out.
Okay. Interesting.
And then we've got Black Panther. So the Black Panther's our first opportunity, really, to address the idea of the Secret Avengers, to address the idea of who Steve Rogers is now. Because we have the scene of him giving up the shield, and presented in the film, that's supposed to be, we're clearly supposed to see that as him returning the shield to Tony because Howard Stark made that shield, and this is like an atonement. But I think it's more powerful than that. I think it's more important than that. I think he's giving up the
I
mantle
think that you're
of Captain
exactly
America,
right. Did you guys notice at the beginning of the film, whenever we're in Lagos and Cap is in his outfit, if you look on his shoulders, he's got an Avengers patch on each shoulder, on his right and on his left. By the time we get to, I think it's Bucharest, where we run into Bucky and like fight with him in his apartment and have that ridiculous auto chase scene, Cap has removed the Avengers patches from both of his shoulders. They are not there for the remainder of the film. Yeah. I saw it, I think, on Tumblr or Pinterest or something, and I was like, there's no way. Somebody just messed up. But then I was watching it last night and paid really close attention, and that is absolutely the case. They are not, it's only in that first scene, and then when we talk about the Sokovia Accords, and after that conversation, Cap, I guess, feels like the Avengers are no longer a team, and that he's no longer heading them.
Yeah. In the scene where we introduce Ant-Man, he has that, we're all focused on Paul Rudd, of course.
Right, he's doing that thing.
Doing that thing that he does. But Cap gets that line about we're acting outside of the law here, and there is clearly a weight on his shoulders as he says it. And I think that this is one of my frustrations with this movie, is that because it is both an Avengers movie and a Cap movie, we don't really get a definitive crystallized version of either of those stories. I kind of want to see what the second act of the movie looks like from Steve Rogers' perspective. I want to see what it feels like for him to be suddenly on the outs after embodying the virtues, after embodying the identity of his homeland. Now he's directly pitched against it. That's a huge internal conflict that's all but lost from the movie because we're making other choices. And that was what I was saying earlier, that the film makes structural decisions that you can't really criticize, because what you get at the end is a strong and compelling core narrative that delivers an emotional punch at the end. But there's an opportunity cost to the kind of storytelling that they've engaged with here that just leaves me a little sad that we don't get more of Wanda, that we don't get more of the Avengers unified, that we don't simultaneously get more of Cap. I kind of feel like this could have been 2 movies. I feel
think
like
that too.
so much
I completely
here.
agree with you. Whenever we left after the first viewing, of course I loved it. I loved every second. It was great. But I left feeling just a little cold because I thought, wait, was that a complete story? Like, did we finish? Well, no,
not really.
And there's so many people out there complaining that it was like at least I've heard a bunch of people go, the movie was so long. It wasn't that much longer than the other ones, but they had so much more they could have told. I would have sat through 5 hours. Come on, guys, give me a 5-hour movie.
Seriously, I would have sat easily 3.5 hours if you would have like just dealt with, if we would have tied up more of the strings that we had just dangling all over the place. It's like, okay, and here we've got Wanda, and we have Peter, we've got T'Challa, and here's Natasha over here, and here's Hawkeye, and here's our Secret Avengers, and Tony's mad at Bucky, and Baron Zemo is like, got this really convoluted plan that could have fallen through at like 18 different ways. We really just focused kind of on the rivalry between Tony and Steve so much that I loved the movie. I enjoyed it a lot, but I did feel like this is like, it felt like a sequel. It didn't feel like, it felt like a sequel very much so. And everybody generally says, the second one is the worst one. And I'm like, well, where is part 3? Which one is that supposed to be? And I want to look forward to that for some resolution here.
Yeah, I think this is, it's interesting because of its place in the MCU, because it's kind of the end of the Captain America trilogy. He sets down the shield at the end. He is no longer Captain America. That's kind of a complete arc. But it's also the middle chapter in what I guess we could call the second Iron Man trilogy. We're kind of folding an Iron Man story in on that too. It's also the third chapter in a way. It's the dissolution of the Avengers. So there's an act structure there too. what's frustrating anyway, did you guys see the comment that Chloe Bennett made yesterday about S.H.I.E.L.D. being ignored by the MCU?
Although I kind of felt that way with some comments that were made by the directors and such.
Yeah, exactly. Well, she came out yesterday and said, we're part of the MCU. We reflect the stories that they choose to tell. They don't pay any attention to our TV show. And she was kind of calling them out a little bit, which I think is really smart, because what we want, these little stories, S.H.I.E.L.D. could handle that.
Yeah.
S.H.I.E.L.D. could give us the story of what happens to Sam next, what happens to Wanda next. I mean, clearly it would mean getting a huge budget for this TV show, but we could do that. We have the means of telling these smaller stories.
Budget, but it's also mean getting a huge viewership.
Oh man, absolutely. Well, I mean, they got Samuel L. Jackson, but I'm pretty sure it's in his contract that just says if you want to be in a Marvel movie, you have to be in all of our properties, no matter what. So they probably should have written that into everybody's contract.
Yeah, well, and they did in S.H.I.E.L.D. Actually, I just watched the newest episode.
My gosh, don't say anything. I'm back.
It's not spoilers.
Okay.
They immediately tie it into the movie because they have a news thing talking about the Accords and everything.
Oh, okay.
And they show
I'm
the
very
team's
behind on
reaction
season
to that. And they're like, that just happened? And so they're very much still connecting it to the movies.
Yes.
And we've brought in Maria Hill. We've brought in Sif. We had Sif showing up after the events of Thor, The Dark World, which was great. That connectivity doesn't just enrich S.H.I.E.L.D. It isn't a one-way street. It also provides a textual depth. It's what J.R.R. Tolkien referred to as the illusion of depth. When you throw out a term, when you throw out a reference, and it's a considered term, it's a considered reference, it's something that really does represent a deeper story, your readers feel as though there's a textual depth to your storytelling. And we can do that with the MCU if they can somehow give something back to, I'm using S.H.I.E.L.D. really as an example, but to Daredevil, to Jessica Jones, to, well, I guess we don't have Agent Carter anymore, do we?
No, which, with that knowledge and watching the film again last night, the entire Peggy's funeral scene, it hit me way harder than the first time that I saw the film. Let's talk about that actually, just like really, really briefly. How do you guys feel about not getting an Agent Carter season 3? And then we'll jump back into Civil War, but just real quick.
Vinton, how do you feel?
I still haven't seen season 2 because Hulu decides to just not give me the first 3 episodes, so I can't start it. I can only start it by skipping the first few episodes, so I still haven't seen it. But I really liked the first season, and I really do want more of that. And I know there's a petition now going for Netflix to pick it up and continue it. What I think would be cool to do is to mix it up. You have 2 Agent Carters now, so you could bring in the new Agent Carter and tell a story more related to what's going on in the movies.
Yeah.
Oh, that's really interesting.
And I thought that would be really cool if they did that, but then they were like canceled. I was like, you had so many good opportunities there.
It'd be great to do something like that, to just tap into that shared history that exists in the MCU now that is now canonical, going all the way back to Cap, to the first Avenger.
Right.
I'm really disappointed that we're not getting a 3rd season. I'm not, at the same time, surprised that we're not getting a 3rd season.
Right.
The 2nd season betrayed a lack of focus, I think. It didn't really tell the story that it set out to tell. The tone was a little weird. It wasn't quite consistent with the rest of the Marvel Universe properties. That said, I would have loved to skip the timeline a little bit. Give me a Haley Atwell, give me a Dominic Cooper in the 60s. Let's do the Marvel Cinematic version of James Bond. Let's do the Marvel Cinematic Universe version of, that kind of polished white plastic 60s super spy stuff. I would love that.
So I'm hoping, really great.
Hoping against hope this isn't the last Haley Atwell that we've seen.
Oh yeah, she is a queen and needs to be just everywhere and everything all the time. Okay, so jumping back into Civil War, where were we? I got really distracted thinking about how great Haley Atwell is. So.
Yeah, what was the Community saying that people were saying about the show Community? 6 seasons in the movie. That's what I'm saying for Agent Carter.
That's right.
Keep the. It's weird. We always get these Netflix petitions whenever a beloved show is canceled. This is the first one that I can think I can actually foresee happening.
Yeah.
Because of the pre-existing relationship between Marvel and Netflix, because the 10-episode model is so perfect, they actually could pick this up and continue it. So that would be interesting. It'd be great to see that coexist alongside the darker stuff that we're getting from Netflix.
Right, exactly.
Daredevil or Jessica Jones or Punisher or Luke Cage or whatever. It'd be nice to see. I'm a huge fan of diversity in the MCU.
Yeah.
And I love that we're getting more and more of that, both in terms of our cast of characters, but also in terms of the types of stories that we're telling. That's only going to help the series exist,
Right. It would be really fun and interesting if we could do like a Howling Commandos miniseries or something like that about Peggy running around with those guys. or even just them running around like just after Cap has left. I think that would be maybe a lot of fun if we were able to explore that at all. And I don't know why people aren't like just gobbling that up. Because it's like it's MCU Band of Brothers basically. So
yeah.
So yeah,
and you can just bring in all the cameos. I mean, you can do what Shield did, or Agents of Shield does, which is, hey, here's all these weird, obscure characters from the comics. We're going to bring them in, so this is all connected to the comics. So comic book fans are constantly like, "Oh, you brought that character in? Oh, that's cool." We kind of already touched on Hawkeye, but one of the things that kind of bothered me about Hawkeye, looking back on it, was that they don't really give a reason for him leaving his family. He's just kind of like, I couldn't walk away, and just ends it there. He kind of almost shoves it aside when he's asked, because he's directly asked in the movie, and he's like, well, I just couldn't leave it alone, so there.
Right.
And then Tony later asked him later, he's like, what, did you not think of your wife? Did you not think of your kids? Which is what I was thinking, so I'm glad he said it. And he's just like, whatever. I was like, okay, I mean, there has to be an answer there, but I don't know what it is.
I think that we maybe get part of that answer whenever Cap is talking to Clint and he's like, hey, thanks for showing up. I wouldn't have called you if I didn't need you. And then Clint says, hey, no big deal. And then looks over at Wanda and says, besides, I owe a debt. I mean, Pietro saved Clint's life. If it weren't for Pietro, Clint wouldn't have his wife and family. His wife and family wouldn't have him.
Great point. Justified.
And so I think that when Steve calls up Clint and is like, hey, we're having this problem. Also, Tony locked Wanda in her room.
Yeah. That's how I imagine the conversation going. Now that you're saying that is, he's like, we're having this problem. He's like, well, I got kids and I'm here with my wife. I'm going to sit this one night. He's like, well, Wanda's locked up. I'm there. What did you say? I'm there. I'm saving her. I got
to ground my daughter.
The Vision. Yeah.
I owe her. I have to help. I care for her deeply.
He shows up. He's like, I'm gone for 5 seconds, and you ground my daughter. You leave her with the robot. What are you guys even doing?
Yeah, my like headcanon and fixing it was him changing his answer basically. Like Tony Stark being like, what about your family? He goes, I have more than one family.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
one of those families needed me.
Yeah. I like that a lot. Yeah. And I think they do bring a really welcome humanity to Hawkeye. I think they did that in Age of Ultron. They really managed to communicate that depth. I think he inherited a certain fragility of character from his appearance in the first Avengers, where he showed up and he was there, but we didn't actually get Clint.
Right.
We didn't get any insight into his character. It's taken some time. He's been on a slow burn for me. But yeah, no, he really won me over. Of that entire enormous ensemble, that intimidating group of characters, including the introduction of these two new characters who get a lot of screen time and a lot of dynamism, they managed to handle the entire ensemble with enormous care and enormous attention.
Yeah, it was
we
really
get character
surprising.
moments from everyone.
Right. Yeah, I was really glad about that, because I went in this movie obviously expecting not to get a lot of these minor characters.
Right.
It's a Captain America movie. It's not an Avengers movie. You're not going to get a lot of that. But I knew Spider-Man was going to be there, and I was super excited about that, obviously. And I love the Vision, so I was like, oh, I hope they do the Vision Scarlet Witch relationship, which they did perfectly. They really set it up to where we're all shipping them now. I think with that cooking scene, they were like, here's what we're going to do to make everyone ship them.
Yes.
But
put the Vision in a sweater. That was all it took.
That's all we needed.
And have him try to cook and then mention, well, I don't eat, so I don't know if this is working.
I've never actually eaten anything. Well, my amygdala is synthetic, so...
So if I had one complaint personally leaving, it was I didn't get enough of those characters. But that complaint's completely fine, because I went in expecting to get a lot less of them.
Yeah, basically none.
Because I thought it wasn't going to be possible to give me what they did give me. So I was so excited they gave me that I completely can look over that. I want whole movies for everybody.
Yeah, that's pretty much where I want to go next too. Is just give me some kind of anthology structure, give me some kind of short story structure,
anything,
where we can have, and I'd like to see that reflected in the comic books. I'd like to see that, reflected in the TV shows, but we're not quite there yet. I think that if this phase of the MCU really does manage to continue to diversify, really manages to draw in a new audience, a more consistent and committed audience. Sarah, you said earlier that this feels like a sequel, and I think you're exactly right. This is the least episodic, least standalone movie that we've had from the MCU so far.
Yeah.
Up to the point that it ends on a game changer.
Yes.
It ends on a change to the existing status quo, but not a great and definitive victory. That's not something that historically you do in movies. That's a TV show format.
Yeah. Yeah, if you hadn't seen... I don't know, 7 other Marvel movies, this movie would make literally 0 sense. Anti-sense.
Yeah, we don't even flash back to Steve and Bucky.
Yeah.
We don't even see that formative relationship. If you haven't seen I mean, you need to have seen both of the preceding Captain America movies, bare minimum, just in order to understand that relationship. Right. Coming in cold to Steve and Bucky, I genuinely don't know what you would make of it. I would love to find someone who hasn't seen any of the Marvel movies
and like decided to go see
Civil
this
War.
one. Yeah.
Right.
Say, what did you just watch? What was that?
I feel like that would be their question also. Right. Who the hell is Bucky? I don't what.
Fair. Yes. Well, let's talk a little about that. Let's segue into the philosophical heart of the matter here, because we talked in the first Crisis on Infinite podcast.
Right, when we were just like spouting theories and ideas, and we talked about, pro-registration, hopes, dreams. I think most of them were fulfilled.
Oh, were we ever so young?
So sweet and naive.
It's all too much for Sarah.
It really is. Oh man, it was so funny because when I told everybody on Twitter that I was going to go see the movie, of course, everyone is like, who had already seen it, was like, Sarah, you need to bring tissues. There's one scene that's going to just make you lose your mind. And I was like, what? Do I need to be worried? Like, is someone dying? What is happening? And they were talking about the Peggy funeral scene, but I actually managed not to weep my way through it entirely. However, I've now seen the movie 3 times. And I'm just like emotionally exhausted.
I don't
at this
remember.
point.
Was that the moment that you broke down and started crying in the theater when we saw it? 'Cause there was a moment where you started like kind of. You lost it.
I was sniffling a bit, but I don't remember if it was that. It must have been that, but it wasn't like profuse weeping.
Yeah.
It was just...
I just remember I saw that conversation on Twitter and I brought you tissues.
And you
so I just pulled one out and gave it to you as you started crying.
Yes, it was that scene. I think I had a single manly tear trickle down the side of my face.
Oh, yes. Yeah, that is a tough sequence. It's lovely to give a character that kind of send-off, and it's better still that we use it to motivate the action. It's great to get that send-off for a character who we love so well, of course, but who is also so important to Steve and to the MCU, the modern MCU. And that's more true now than ever, I guess, because of the way that her story has touched all of these other stories. You know, she appeared in Ant-Man. She's had all of this connectivity there, and I love that. It also works as a way of introducing Sharon Carter properly. We get our first glimpse of that character. That whole thing worked. I didn't find it as emotionally ruinous as I did the farewell between Cap and Peggy that we saw previously in the hospital room.
I completely agree. Yeah.
Because that was the personal farewell to me. And I'd kind of already made my peace with the idea that she was dead. I don't know. I don't know if I'd misread that scene or just kind of filled that in. I didn't think we were going to return to her, so I'd kind of made my peace there. What really worked for me emotionally was that core conflict between Tony and Steve, particularly the end, the heartbreaking delivery on that line that has kind of echoed through this movie since the trailer when Cap says, he's my friend. And Tony said, so was I.
Yeah.
And the use of the past tense there. And you just think, oh my God, you guys.
Again.
Yeah, because that's at the very end when he says, so was I. Like, I thought it was going to happen earlier in the movie when they were having that discussion in the boardroom, but nope, that happened at the end. And then he's like, yep, so was I. And it's like, oh, it's over. Yeah. Oh.
They need a get along shirt. We need to just jam them in there without their suits and just sit them in a room.
Yeah. Which I really like. Speaking of the end of it, I mean, not to rush things forward or anything, but when they're fighting and it's cutting back and forth between them and Black Panther out there with Zemo, and Black Panther's just he's taking off his mask, he's just sitting down, chill with Zemo.
Super chill.
And he's having that conversation, and Zemo's explaining to him why he did everything, and he's like, my family, I couldn't let that stand. And Black Panther's like, everyone's so consumed with vengeance, I won't let that happen to me.
It's great to see that character carry the moral message of the movie like that. I loved that moment. And that entire, I think T'Challa came out of this really well. He really
did. Yeah. Probably, I mean, because everyone, of course, as soon as they walk out of this movie for the first time, I think is going to have that same conversation that we had on our first episode of Crisis on Infinite podcast, which is Tony right or is Cap right? And I think, and we talked about in
Black Panther's right.
Black Panther's right. Yeah.
Black Panther's right. There you go. Spider-Man's right.
Oh, hey, your video's working again.
Oh, good.
Yeah, whenever Spider-Man has that line, he says that you think you're right and that makes you dangerous. Yes, absolutely. Yes, you think you're right, you're dangerous, you are consumed by vengeance. Everybody who didn't have a dog in this fight is able to see the forest for the trees and understand kind of on a grander scale what exactly is going on.
It is funny to me, though, how people can still be so divisive over the movie. As soon as Alan saw the movie. He just jumped on Twitter with the snarkiest comments ever about how much he hates Captain America's side of things. Just be like, I love Captain. I'm Captain America, and I don't care about people at all. And I'm Captain America, and if you're Team Captain, you obviously hate everyone. And
you get to do what you want, and you're outside of the law.
It was just so aggressive that I had to jump in and start defending Cap. And I'm not even necessarily Team Cap, but I was like, I'm gonna have to start defending this because there are two sides of this, and they were both wrong.
Yeah.
When we were talking about it back in that first COIP episode, I said at the time, the big problem, the big challenge that they face is that Tony's going to have to articulate his side of the argument really well, because otherwise it's a no-brainer. And he super articulated his argument really well.
I think that he articulated his side so well that I think, upon the third viewing of this film, I feel like Cap comes out weaker.
Yeah,
much weaker. Right. I'm looking at this and I'm like, okay, Steve, I'm trying real hard to understand where you're coming from. And I'm having a lot of difficulty. I really have to side with Tony a lot. I think that one of my favorite scenes is whenever, right before the big fight in the airport, when Tony has taken his mask off and he's just talking to Cap, and he's like, you've been a huge idiot. I'm trying to keep everybody together. And he breaks. He has that moment. And I'm just like, you don't want this at all. You don't want this. And you want to. And I mean, when Natasha even earlier was like, it's more important that we stay together than how we stay together. And just, Cap ripped off his Avengers patch. That's not important to him.
Yeah. And Stark articulating the argument, I'm doing this so that something worse doesn't happen. We're making this concession. We're making this compromise so that worse doesn't afflict us in the future. I think they did a great job. There is a slight kind of conflict overlap. And I think this is sometimes why people can be infuriated by Cap's actions, because on the one hand, you've got the philosophical argument. You've got the, should exceptional people be allowed to be exceptional? Right. Should they be freed from the strictures of society, or should they be constrained by the same rules that govern everyone else, the way that we generally govern a democracy? That's the philosophical argument. On the other hand, you have the personal argument, which is, but what about Bucky? Was Bucky culpable for what he did? And is it right that we punish him, that we take vengeance upon him for what he did as the Winter Soldier? Well, I think it even goes beyond that. And I think the one question that people don't ask when they automatically jump to Team Iron Man and just say Cap's crazy is that somebody's behind this. Somebody made Bucky do that, and Team Iron Man's ignoring it. They just think Bucky's the one, just kill him and it's over. But no, there's someone bigger here. There's something bigger going on here, and whatever it is needs to be stopped. And while Cap is trying to save his friend and clear his friend's name, he's the only one actually fighting the villain through most of the movie. Right. He's the one chasing the villain, trying to end the bad thing that's happening here. Yeah, Cap comes off as a lot less paranoid when you live in a world that actually did see Hydra rise to power. Yeah, I don't know how anyone in this universe trusts literally any other human being. Exactly. I saw Winter Soldier. I saw Scarlett Johansson transform in front of my eyes into a completely different looking human. It's insane. And then all this stuff in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., you see that kind of thing going on where we have that mask technology just everywhere. I don't, there cannot be any trust in this universe at all. But people like Steve continue to trust people, and so that says a lot about who he is as a person. Despite seeing this, what does he say? These are still talking about the Sokovia Accords. These are still people with agendas, and agendas change and regimes fall. It's to be able to, for him to still trust James Buchanan Barnes, whereas everybody else just sees the Winter Soldier is a big deal. And I do appreciate that about Steve. Yeah, and it's the idea of, here's a guy who lived through World War II and then Hydra on top of that, and he knows what happens when our government turns out to be the bad guys and we're signed contracts to them and we are locked down to be their puppets. Yeah. And what happens when they go to war and we don't even realize that they're necessarily wrong, and we start fighting a war for them only to realize that now they're the Nazis, now they're Hydra. Yeah. Now, what happens then? We can't necessarily attach ourselves to people like that. The safest hands are still our own sometimes. Yeah, and I think that argument works within the context of the Marvel Universe significantly better than it works within the context of the real universe. So you can allow for Tony's position, and you're right, that heartbreaking moment when he's talking about holding the team together, and Cap throws it right back in his face. You tore this team apart when you signed. I think that's powerful, maybe not entirely justified, because we have that overlap. We have the transition from the philosophical to the intensely personal. And I'm not quite sure how those two halves of the story sit alongside each other. It is a little frustrating that we don't get a complete, considered conclusion, a verdict on the Sokovia Accords. You know, we don't really get that. And we don't get the rest of the Avengers weighing in on the question of Bucky. Because they're fighting for Cap. They're not fighting for the possible redemption of the Winter Soldier, or out of this philosophical concern for moral culpability. You know, this is something we talk about all the time in Dusted when we talk about Buffy the Vampire Slayer. If you're not in control, then you're not responsible. We haven't really hit on that in the MCU just yet. It would have been interesting to see that develop too. But these two conflicts are running alongside each other, and we're jumping from one to the other to the other. And that, I think, is why Wanda gets lost in the shuffle. Because she's only in the Sokovian Accords side of the story, and not at all in the Bucky side of the story. And that's just, that's too bad. And it's unfortunate too to see, I mean, I don't want to be too emphatic about this. I don't want to be too heavy-handed about it. I certainly don't want to be too critical about it, because I do think we're moving in the right direction. But this is another Marvel movie where all the women disappear at the end of the second act. And we have a lot of men talking about their fathers and no women taking action at all.
Point.
And that's, I mean, it is better. It is an improvement. We are getting more rich female characters being brought in. We're getting more racial and ethnic diversity too, which can only be a good thing. But it is a little disheartening. When Wanda's right there, that inciting incident, we get that opening movement in Lagos, which works so beautifully. It's such a tiny moment. Watching the film for the second time, what stood out to me is the attack on the building in the first place. When Wanda hurls Cap up at the window and he bursts in, and his parting words to her, she says, "What about the gas?" And he says, "Get it out." Knowing that she can handle this, knowing that she can do this incredibly difficult thing, his faith in her is like my favorite thing. I love that. So I love that she's there. I love that she's present in the inciting incident. It's just too bad that the movie changes course. And I don't even think that the course change is a bad thing. I don't think the other half of the story is bad or less well developed or less compelling. It's just different. But it means that the consequence of that shift is that we lose Wanda, we lose Natasha. Sharon all but disappears, in the midpoint of the movie.
Yeah, the funny, my friend Rachel and I were talking about, she was talking about the film, and we concluded that it was really funny that Steve discovers that he's got to go to Moscow. And who does he know on his team who is Russian and knows Russia really, really well? What's that, Natasha? No, Bucky, grab your stuff! Okay, sure, all right. I mean, I get that Natasha was using her widow's bite to take out the Black Panther, and that was really cool, but just have her hop in the Quinjet. Why can't she? Give me one good reason why she cannot come with you. There isn't one.
Yeah.
Because it's the Bucky and Steve show, I guess. Welcome to the Bucky and Steve happy hour. And also we brought Tony.
Which we asked, where did Sharon Carter go? I wish she would have gone to Agent Carter Season 3. That's where she should have gone. That's where she should have gone, Marvel. You dropped the ball. You set it up and you dropped it.
That's what they do with all of their strong female leads, is that they put them in television shows instead of the movies, apparently.
Womp, womp.
Womp, womp.
Did we miss an opportunity to really deliver an emotional punch in this movie by having Rhodey survive? Because the shot in the trailer suggested,
and when all the rumors were saying that somebody died, and they kept showing him, that's why I knew he wasn't going to die, because all the rumors said someone died, and they kept showing him. They're they're not going to show him like that if he dies.
Right.
They're not going to just give that away in the trailer.
Here is my idea and suggestion. If we had Rhodey die in that moment, if we had lost Rhodey, yes, it would have been this huge emotional punch. But I think that maybe the writers and the directors really wanted that video of Bucky killing Tony's mom and dad to be the big emotional moment for Tony. I think that if Tony had completely lost Rhodes, that he would, he would have been done with Bucky from just then. And Steve also, they wouldn't have even had the conversation, he's my friend, so was I. There would have been no talking. There just would have been laser blasts.
Well, I gotta say though, slightly changing, but just going a little bit further, Vision, when he says, I made a mistake.
I was distracted.
I was distracted. And Tony Stark goes, I didn't think that was possible. And he goes, I didn't either.
Yeah.
And it's just so powerful. That one line, I didn't either.
Mm-hmm. I loved that Vision and Wanda, after the entire Airport 5, Vision just I'm sorry. And she's like, me too. And they're super cool.
Yeah.
Totally great.
And that I didn't either carries this undertone of, it was because of her.
Yeah.
I was so focused on her and so caring about her. I didn't think this was possible for me to so it's almost this, I didn't think it was possible for me to fall in love.
Right. Yeah, he's becoming more human, which is really super cool.
Yeah, there's that lovely ambivalent and ambiguous moment, earlier in the movie where he taps the Infinity Stone and says, I don't understand how this thing works. And it's like, well, okay, you're almost a human being and you're tapping your head, and buddy, none of us understand how that thing works. I love that perspective on the Vision growing and becoming. That's a great story, and a wonderful little minor story. We get the little beat with Natasha and Clint. Are we still friends? Well, it depends how hard you hit me. That's
and then Scarlet Witch comes up
interaction.
and just wins that fight for them, and then says, "You're pulling your punches."
You know who is not friends at the end of this movie? Natasha and Wanda.
Yeah.
No nail polish dates for them, I guess. Because dang,
What's wonderful about that, though, is that it shows that Clint, hardened, experienced warrior that he is, he will still fight for the thing that he's fighting for, but he will pull his punches. Wanda, even stricken by guilt, even stricken by responsibility, won't. She has this purity of intent, which I just find magnetic. She
really is, which I have started picking up. There's a new Scarlet Witch comic book series out right now, and it's on issue 6. It's pretty good. The art has been different with every issue, which has been really interesting. But it's basically Wanda and so it's comic book Wanda. So we're talking post House of M, post Children's Crusade, post killed off a ton of the Avengers and rewrote the entire reality of the universe and all this stuff. So she's trying to atone for all of her sins and all of her mistakes by basically running around being a supernatural private investigator, which is the coolest sounding concept, right? That sounds amazing.
Oh, yeah.
It's not very well written, which breaks my heart because I'm like,
I got really excited when you told me about it.
I know, and I'll let you borrow them. I'll bring them over. But it's clearly made for me. It's like we took the Scarlet Witch and Buffy and Supernatural and everything that you love and jammed it into one thing, and here you go. And I'm just like, yeah, but you're not doing that great. And so, but I do think that it's worth it. I'm gonna wait for the trade to come out and maybe pick it up. The art alone is definitely worth it, and then just seeing this side of Wanda and learning a little bit more about her is great. But I've been told that comics aren't always the best written ever, so there's that. But I do recommend it's pretty worth it.
Yeah. It's a real shame that Marvel tried the Ultimate Comics experiment back in the early 2000s. They tried spinning off this entire new universe so they could reinvent all their characters and strip them of all the baggage and give us this fresh, authentic take. And that worked for some characters. Spider-Man didn't work for some characters.
Yeah.
Pretty much everyone else. But the Ultimate Comics line was such a good idea if they just waited for the MCU, and then they could have given us an entire line about these versions of these characters without having to retroactively fit cinematic universe continuity into the comic books. It would have been great if we just had a fresh slate with here's the Wanda that you know from Age of Ultron. Here she is, and she gets a 6-issue mini herself. That would have been
amazing.
Great.
Well, before we move on too far, there are 2 comments I wanted to make on the Team Captain, Team Iron Man thing real quick, which was that when you're arguing these things, there's certain things I think you have to keep in mind. I think going into this movie, it's easy to forget. One of them is that Iron Man himself was opposed to this type of thing in his own movies.
Yes, he was.
He was asked by the government to give the suit over to be on that side. And he was like, no, never. And so he was against that up until this point. And all it took was this mom talking to him to change his heart completely. And it's not that Cap's, I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm just saying that that's what happened. And then Cap sees him knowing who he was before that mom talked to him and not seeing that situation, and then going, wait, what? And as far as he knows, Stark just turned like that.
Right.
And so he's just really confused by the situation. Like, wait, that's not who you are. That's not what you would normally say. What is happening? Why are you so quick to sign these documents all of a sudden and turning your back on us? Why are you so quick to do this? Because he didn't give a lot of background information up until the point where he does show the son. But even then, he doesn't fully explain what's going on. But then at the end of the movie, and I think this is important, Tony himself becomes Team Cap.
Yes, he does.
Before they actually fight over Bucky again, at the end, he's like, oh, I realized I was wrong in this. One, the government guy, Ross, is kind of a jerk, and he wants to see you all in jail.
Pause real quick. Why are both of our government dudes named Ross? How did that slide by? We got, what is it, Thunderbird Ross, the Secretary of State, Thunderbolt? Anyway, and then John Watson shows up and is also named Ross. And
I guess I missed that.
Yeah, his name, it's Everett or Emrit. I will double check. Yeah.
Oh no,
man.
Everett Ross.
And so I guess
you're right.
The reason that happened is because of comics. But seriously, you guys, we got two white dudes in the U.S. government who are angry at the Avengers, and they're both named Ross.
Yeah, like Thunderbolt Ross specifically seems like Tony sees through him, like when he's not going to answer his calls, and he's like, "I'm not going to deal with you," because you just want to see superheroes in prison. You just want control over this situation. I'm not going to do that anymore.
Which ties all the way back to the Incredible Hulk and one of the very first Marvel Universe crossovers we ever had.
Real life from the comics, real life, quote unquote, from the comics version of Ross, who is very anti these heroes and thinks he should have the control, and the government should have the control. And so Stark himself kind of turned slightly. I mean, he's not going to agree completely with what Cap did. He's not saying that things should have been different, but he's like, "Oh, I see now what you were doing, Cap, and I see that there was this villain behind this, and I see that your friend was innocent in this, and we do need to stop this villain who was doing this thing. I see now that I was at least partially wrong." And the only fault that I can really see out of the whole thing is that Cap doesn't really have that I was partially wrong. Now, he does have that kind of running through the movie where he's like, "I'm not sure this is the thing to do, but it's what I have to do." But he doesn't really have that moment of, "Yeah, I was wrong too."
Yeah.
Whereas Stark did have the I was wrong moment.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I hadn't thought about that, but Cap doesn't have that intellectual kind of that intellectual bias toward the core problem here, because you're right. From the beginning, he kind of accepts this isn't a perfect situation, but it's a situation that we can negotiate. It's a situation about which we can compromise, but I have something more pressing. I have something more important. I have Bucky. I have to deal with that. It would have kind of been nice to have that really beat of
him. Of Tony saying that, I was kind of wrong. And then Captain saying, "Yeah, I know I turned on half the Avengers here, and you guys are my friends and you are my family, and I'm sorry, but it's what I had to do." Like, just saying something like that.
And dude,
wreck
that airport.
Guys, you just created like 12 more Zemos from the people who own those planes.
Yeah, but they at least evacuated the airport first, right? Like, we're just hoping there wasn't like one janitor with headphones on who wasn't paying attention.
Another kind of, I don't know, maybe Mark against Stark here. He's so against destruction and all this, but he just shows up at the airport and says, "Let's do this. Let's destroy everything here."
I mean, like, Nat even asks him, she's like, "This isn't going as planned. What do you want to do?" And he's like, "Well, my plan was to go easy on him. You want to change it up a little bit?" So, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know. I feel like you have to realize that Stark did change his mind kind of at the end and kind of became more Team Cap. And so you have to see that they're both wrong here. Neither side is perfectly right in this.
Right.
And you have to find that middle ground that T'Challa does find perfectly, beautifully.
Yes.
Now he's just going to be like, "Nope, justice is going to be served and I'm not going to be consumed by vengeance."
Yeah, it's slightly different for T'Challa, though, because he's speaking from the very privileged position of running his own country.
Yeah,
no one is going to give him orders.
From, I think, the audience perspective, we can see everything now and go, "Oh, yeah, they're consumed by vengeance here." But here's the ending argument to it all, and why everyone should be Team Cap, actually.
I'm listening.
Our beautiful, wonderful Liz Stevens is Team Cap, and that means we should all fall in line behind her.
Oh, wait, let me check my bracelet. No, it does say "what would Liz do?" You're right.
We follow unquestionably our fearless Cap, Liz Stevens.
It's so interesting coming out of it, though, and you're right, getting caught in that dilemma and talking about the crunch, the narrative and philosophical crunch that underpins the story. I'm fascinated to see Lonnie swung hard from kind of an almost Team Iron Man position to a super Team Cap position. And I kind of went the other way. Yeah, the way that the Sokovia Accords are presented, I ended up Team Iron Man. I kind of did
also. I mean, because it was really hard for me because we all know that I want to be loyal to the characters that I love so much, and of course Wanda is on Team Cap, and everybody's like, "Look how great Wanda is," and I'm like, "I'm there. I want to be her. Please let me just chill with her for 5 seconds." But then just every time Tony and Cap are talking, I'm like, Tony is not wrong. Like, I hear what you're saying, man, and I think that I have to agree. And so I ended up walking out and giving it some time to kind of think about it. I am on Team Cap when it comes to the Sokovia Accords, but then, like, I think about Steve's just unwavering loyalty to Bucky, and I'm like, I get that too. I do, yeah.
Well, and I meant to say this earlier when I was talking about Stark changing. He might not become full Team Cap, but he did become anti-Team Iron Man. And I think it's more, he wasn't philosophically wrong. He was philosophically right. He was situationally wrong. Mm-hmm. In the situation, it didn't call for what he was doing, and it needed something different.
Right, exactly. Yeah, so it would have been interesting to, I don't know if like whenever you get like, the super special director's edition of this on Blu-ray, if you have like a printout of what some of the Sokovia Accords like would have said or whatever, but it would be interesting to see what they
Here's
said.
All 900 pages.
Oh, wow. Yeah, here is the Bible Sokovia Accords.
That would be awesome, right?
Put it out, Marvel, I'll buy it.
What's interesting... To kind of turn to another podcast project that is coming out of the Graphomania network right now, it's interesting looking at this movie in the light of Hamilton. It's interesting looking at the process of effectively world building. We are trying to construct a world that can encompass this new truth, this new reality. How do we do that? And the answer in Civil War, in Hamilton, in real life, historically, has been, well, you make a lot of enemies.
It's funny that you said that because immediately when I said, give us this 900-page printout of the Sokovia documents, I heard Jefferson in my head saying, it's too long. No one could read that. Yeah,
exactly. That was literally what I thought in the theater also. I was like, none of them are going to read that. No one is going to. Who wrote this? I bet you 20 pages in, it just says, all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. For like 30 pages, no one's going to notice. Yeah,
there's a lot of lorem ipsum in this document. It's so weird.
Yeah, but where did you wind up, Vinton? I think that Alastair and I both kind of mentioned where we were. But
yeah, I went in Team Spider-Man.
Right. Okay. I don't know why I keep asking you this question. I know what the answer is. Never mind. Moving on.
I left Team Black Panther.
Oh, okay.
and I'm being honest about that because Black Panther did have like the more high ground. You obviously pointed it out. He's a king. He can have that position, but. The thing about the whole movie, I mean, this is speaking more than just philosophically, just my enjoyment of the movie. I went in going, I'm gonna love Spider-Man. I'm gonna leave loving Spider-Man and be super excited. I went in loving Spider-Man and left wanting a Black Panther movie more than anything.
Yeah,
I was like, I did not expect to love Black Panther so much. I've never read much Black Panther. I've never cared much about the character. I mean, he's obviously big in our history as a country. I mean, he's what the Black Panther movement was named after. And
I didn't know that.
Yeah. They took their name from him because he was one of the first Black superheroes, and so he had this empowerment there, and finally diversity that early even, which is really surprising. And
he wasn't like a teenage kid riding a skateboard.
Yeah.
So
which seems to be the thing to do with minorities in comic books and TV shows. Let's give them a skateboard and make them young.
Yep.
And punk kids.
Yep. That's
all minorities apparently. Oh no.
No, I love how much gravitas they gave to T'Challa and to T'Chaka too. It was wonderful to see them and I don't know exactly what the word is that I'm looking for here, but to see them be be properly, kingly.
Well, and knowing that they're going to kill off T'Chaka in like just a few seconds, basically.
I loved him.
They gave so much to him, and he was not a throwaway character, even though he was only there for like half a minute.
And I think that I loved. Seeing his interaction with, I loved seeing T'Chaka and T'Challa interacting and, them talking to one another in Wakandan and just like that really like just personal conversation that they're having right after Natasha has gotten up and left and like she's apologized. And you can see in T'Chaka's face that, it doesn't make it okay, but he is grateful that she apologized for what happened in Lagos. The regality of both of them.
That's a much better word. Yes,
and regality, then for him to get up and start talking about, when stolen vibranium was made into this weapon, we had to think about what our legacy is now. And so we wanted to go out and make a name for ourselves and do good. And look what happened. And people need to be held accountable. Like I bought it hook, line, and sinker, like every bit of it.
Yeah, it's almost as though they believe that with great power comes great responsibility too. That really worked. What did you guys think of the look of the film? Obviously, we're talking a lot about the story. We're talking about these characters that we love. What did you think of the way the movie looked? Because it kind of, to me, felt like it was Marvel house style, but just a little more polished, just a little more, I don't know, careful.
The thing that I noticed just last night, rewatching it again, was that I feel like almost zero shots are done on a steady cam. Like, it feels like everything, somebody is holding it and moving with our characters, and just none of the shots are like, I think possibly the stuff in the bunker whenever we're seeing Wanda like in her bedroom and stuff, I think that all of that actually is pretty still, but otherwise everything is moving around. We're moving around with everyone, and I actually really enjoyed that. It felt closer, it felt more intimate, it felt like you were more a part of the action that is going on rather than like it being I want to use the word stoic, but I don't think that that's what I mean. But yeah, so I really liked that. I enjoyed. Yeah, it did look polished. I really liked all of that. I loved, I think, like the color palettes that we had going on. Everybody's outfits looked great with the exception of Wanda's corset. I don't know why we had to hike up Lizzie Olsen's breasts that much. It was a little ridiculous.
She was certainly looking a little more curvy than she did in Age of Ultron.
And it was a bit distracting, if we're going to be honest.
A little bit, yeah.
So I don't know what was up with that. Also, why is Natasha's like Black Widow suit zipped down halfway? You're about to fight. You're the one who went up to Steve and said, "You know what's about to happen, girl. Zip up your shirt. What are you doing? Why is this? Because you're female."
And that goes. I mean, that does go a little bit both ways. One of the funny things that was pointed out to me was you have that Chris Evans scene of Captain America pulling down the helicopter, just flexing it out there, and someone actually pointed out the reason why they did that, and I completely believe this, is because Chris Evans has it written in that he will not take his shirt off. He's not going to be eye candy for everybody. So they're like, "Oh, if you want to take your shirt off, we're going to put you in the shirt that's 3 sizes too small for you and make you just flex it out for like 10 to 20 seconds."
Okay, see, now you're making me want to be like super sexist and be like, "But no, that's okay. That's totally fine." But that's not fair. Apparently, by the way, that stunt was like as practical as they could make it. Apparently, Chris Evans is legitimately like holding on to a helicopter and also a side of this building, which is insane.
Wow. Yeah, I don't know if it was an actual running helicopter because I think the behind the scenes stuff I saw was they had green screen. I think they had a device
like
that was pulling the helicopter, and he was pulling back.
Yeah, it would be insanely. That scene scared me more than any other thing. Whenever Bucky slams the chopper like back into the tower, and you just get like screeching, slicing,
and the blades.
I like curled up in my seat and was so freaked out.
For me, it was when he grabs Steve and just pulls him in, and the helicopter starts to fall, and you just see them both going toward the water. I felt that vertigo of falling, and I was like, "Oh no!"
Oh, no. And then, this is something that I picked up on last night also. Bucky slams his face into the glass of the chopper windscreen thing, whatever, and then comes to, I guess, he's unconscious, but then is suddenly no longer the Winter Soldier. I don't know how the Winter Soldier, like, secret word combo brainwashing thing works, but, like, if it's just head trauma, Natasha beat the shit out of him. Like, just, elbow, bam, 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 and none of that did it. So, is it water? Is water the trick? Do you just, like, splash some water on his face? I don't know. It's been a long time.
A cold shower,
okay.
It's been... Actually, no, it turns out that it's falling off of a roof in a helicopter.
Oh, man,
it's like a really specific circumstance.
Well, I mean, if you're going to use...
they just lucked into that one.
Specific of, like, a brainwashing thing, you got to have a really specific way to get him out, so...
Right. Really expensive in terms of helicopters.
Yes.
They only sent him out to assassinate the most important people.
Yep. And then take their helicopter and then crash it.
Yeah.
And then we'll come get you.
Well, and back to the original question, I think it was way more polished, way more clean and bright even, would be the word I would use for it, especially in this era of dark and gritty that we've been in. And
it wasn't at all like Batman versus Superman where I'm having to squint a lot to figure out what is going on.
Well, specifically, the thing I was thinking of was that all their costumes, they're always trying to tone down the costumes. Let's make this a darker shade. And like, think of all the Spider-Man costumes we've had. They've made them really dark. They weren't afraid with this one. They're like, nope, he's in the bright red and blue. Yeah. It's super bright, super clean. There it is. This is the tone of the movie.
And they managed to hold that all together. They managed to make it consistent, even though we've got Spider-Man in his underoos. Absolutely. We've got Ant-Man in his like weird and atypical outfit. Yeah. We've got the Vision, for goodness sake.
Yes.
In this gaudy, translucent...
And his funny cape.
It's amazing. Yeah. They managed to make this whole thing just fit together. I don't think anyone's outfit worked as well as Black Panther's. I think that was...
It really was a standout.
That was right there. Yeah. What did you guys make of the really... It took me half the movie, I swear, to make my peace with the incredibly intrusive Wes Anderson location title cards.
Oh, I liked it. I thought it was fun. But I guess I'm a big Wes Anderson fan. I didn't even make that connection until you just said that. I knew watching it, I was like, that looks familiar. That looks like a thing. But then you said that, and I'm like, oh, that's why I liked them.
That's really funny.
It hit me on a subconscious level.
I'm glad that it didn't happen with it happened with most location changes, but I was trying to pay, like, the first time that it popped up, I was sitting there going, what font is that? That looks really good. it was okay because I felt like it didn't take too terribly long, and frankly, I liked having that rather than the beepy, clicky, like typewriter stuff down in the bottom corner.
Like it's the X-Files and it's 1995.
Right, exactly, yeah.
Well, and it adds to that brightness, that polish. It's like here's this bright, bold letters in your face. This is not a dark, gritty movie.
It's funny that you say that because I think that looking at the movie as a whole, you can really see that bold approach. You can see that bold aesthetic from you're right, the colors, absolutely, the way that it's all saturated, the way that it's so vivid, the font work and the location cards, the music even. Yeah. There's nothing in this movie that feels like it's apologetic for what it is. It sets out to tell its story, and I think it does a wonderful job.
It really does. And I mean, you don't have a lot of nighttime scenes or anything like that. Most things are in the day. When they show locations, it's like bright midday and everything's clean looking. So I thought that was really interesting, and it does, like, the more I'm thinking back on it, set a complete tone for the movie of this clean polish.
Sure, even setting that opening sequence in Lagos, even having that a very unconventional kind of atmosphere around the opening action sequence, I thought was great. It's enough to reseat your expectations of what an MCU film can be. I think that the entire aesthetic worked really beautifully. This is the reason I think that the Russo brothers are really worth watching in action, because they come from directing comedy, because they came from directing Community, they came from directing Arrested Development.
I didn't
so they
know
have this control. Oh, that was one of the great Easter eggs I saw on the internet last night, that the stair car from Arrested Development, it's right there in the airport scene. It's right between, and is it Cap and Ant-Man is there talking?
I actually haven't seen it, but someone told me about it, and so I was really wanting to go back and look for it.
I saw still, I wish I could remember it, but yeah, it's the actual Bluth Company stair car.
Oh, how funny!
Yeah, it's in the airport
right there, so. That I think also speaks to the tone. It speaks to that everything is as big as it should be. It really isn't. I'm trying to articulate this. I'm trying to put my finger on exactly what it is. There is something about Batman versus Superman and the modern suite of DC movies that feels inherently apologetic. It feels as though it's trying to excuse what it is. It's trying to excuse the story that it's there to tell. So it goes darker and it goes grimmer and it goes more portentous and heavy-handed. Whereas the Marvel movies, and I don't know to what degree this is even intentional, I don't know to what degree anyone involved is mindful of this, it feels like they're just showing up to tell a story and enjoying the process.
Right. Well, and I listened to an interview with the Russo brothers, and someone asked them about this. They were like, okay, so, you have these movies, other superhero movies, and they're all focused on one thing. Like, this one's really grim, this one's really funny. It seems like you guys try to do a lot in your movies. You want the sad moments, you want the laughs in there, and you want the hard thing. And they straight out said, they're like, in a movie, we feel like you should have every bit of emotion that you have experienced. You should have the full spectrum experience in a film if you want to tell a good story.
I definitely
And so we try to put all of that into our films. We try to put all of that into anything we write.
Oh, that's really interesting. Yeah. Yeah, no, you definitely see it on the screen. For a movie to encompass that moment that just makes your heart pound in your chest as Steve is rocking back and forth and says, I can do this all day. And you think, oh my God, to have that all the way through to, Sam refusing to move his seat forward to give Bucky a little more legroom in the back.
No.
Did you guys buy Cap and Sharon kissing? What'd you guys think of that?
I mentioned this earlier to you. I really feel like someone mentioned this to me and I buy it, that they were putting the movie together and someone, I don't know who, probably not the Russo brothers, but someone was like, no, Cap and Bucky are getting a little too close. This bromance is a little too real, and we can't have our main characters express that type of sexuality. So we need Captain America to kiss a girl. We need Captain America to kiss a girl.
This is all getting a little Batman 66 up in here.
Can we get him to kiss a girl real quick, please? Otherwise, we might have to make some applause.
Oh, I genuinely hadn't thought of that.
Heads,
I
just
fear
be
that
silent
you're right.
Let it happen, guys.
Yes. Yeah. I feel like if I watched this movie right after watching Winter Soldier, I would have been more on board with Sharon Carter.
Right.
In principle, I think she would work better coming in from her exposure there, because here she just picks up that role, delivers some exposition, and then disappears again. And there's not that much there. But I do remember liking her in Winter Soldier, so maybe that's... Maybe watching this as a trilogy, I think, would work
maybe
out better.
So. I haven't actually seen Winter Soldier since I think it came out in theaters, so it has been a long time. So it will be really interesting to be able to sit down with all three Captain America movies and watch them.
Yeah, the minute Civil War comes out on Blu-ray, we're sitting down, we're watching all three.
That's
We've already got it planned. It's going to be awesome.
Well, I think it was Honest Trailers that pointed out that she in this movie, she's mostly just a weapon delivery system.
Basically,
she is the way to get them their weapons back.
Yep.
Exactly. Which is, another slight mark against the movie. She gets sidelined just as Wanda.
Right.
And
Which,
Natasha
okay, and here's the other thing. It's so frustrating because whenever Zemo brainwashes Bucky in... Where are they? Vienna? There are so many places in the place that they're at.
The place. The thing.
Like Sharon and Natasha are so badass. It's ridiculous. Like, I mean,
I think that was Berlin.
Okay, in Berlin. Whenever Sharon and Nat both go in, and I mean, just punches and kicks and all this stuff just flying all over the place and being ridiculously powerful and strong and capable. And like the only way that he can take out Nat is by choking her with his scary metal arm.
Yeah. Yeah, because they are both super powerful and they can take people down.
Right.
They're not weak characters here.
It's really crazy how even our human characters, talking about like Sam, Natasha, Clint, all of these people, I mean, like, these people should be dead. Some of the fights, when you're watching it, you're just like, your spine is broken in like 6 places.
Well, that's one of the interesting things that they kind of hinted at the end of Age of Ultron, where we have that shot of our new Avengers assembling. Well, I guess we cut before they actually technically assemble, but it's there anyway. When we open in Nigeria in Civil War, I was really impressed by how much they managed to communicate that the skill of the Avengers lies not in their power or in their in their powers or in their gadgets, but in their training. The fact that they work so well.
Yeah, you just brought up something that I hadn't thought of, which was in the comics. One of the big arguments is that, well, we need to get them together because they need proper training. We can't have all these vigilantes out there. But in the movies, they are together and they are getting proper training.
Yeah, I think that's part of the argument, certainly for preserving the Avengers as a team, as a unit, as an organization. I think that works really well. It wasn't. I don't think anyone made that argument directly, specifically within the frame of the movie, but it's there.
It was really, really cool to see in that beginning scene how, you just hear Cap's voice come over and be like, what do you see? And so, like, we're training Wanda. We're training her to, be the best that she can be. And then you've got Nat jumping in and being like, it's got to be second nature to look over your shoulder. Has anyone ever told you you're paranoid? And all that kind of stuff.
Why? Did you hear something?
And just seeing, oh, gosh, it's just so heartbreaking just to see the camaraderie and the family that they are becoming. And then we all have a big old fight, and it's just the worst.
Yeah, it's tough. There are all of those second-tier stories that we can explore, all of those interpersonal conflicts that we can look at. And we get a little of that from Wanda and the Vision, and I guess, Clint gets pulled into that too. But I would like more of that. I would like to see more of these characters. I'd like to see those characters just on an ongoing basis. And I'm kind of a little sad that we're looking forward to Infinity War, which is going to be this cataclysmic, cosmic, event. I would really like there to be another Avengers movie between now and then, just so we can have just another story. Give these guys some time. Figure out what was going on with Martin Freeman in Civil War. That would have been great.
I totally agree.
Well, we are kind of getting closer on time, I'm sure. So I do want to bring up one more thing that we haven't talked about at all, which is Zemo himself. We've just completely ignored the villain in this movie. So I have opinions on that. I'm sure you guys do too.
I think that they did an excellent job. Because we saw all the trailers and everything in the trailer was, Tony versus Cap, and that's great. And so it was really, really excellent that we were able to bring in this other antagonist who, it turns out, his entire thing was getting it to be Tony versus Cap. Zemo's plan is, and this is a criticism of literally every film in the history of ever. There are like 18 different ways that plan could have gone wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
What would have happened if Cap and Bucky hadn't gone to Moscow? Like, what was the plan there? What if Tony hadn't decided to follow? Yeah, exactly. So I don't want to be too critical of that.
Yeah, every supervillain in the movie always has these plans that they have no control over 75 to 90% of it.
There's no way it's going to work.
And yet it always works out perfectly for them until the very end when it doesn't. And in this movie, I guess it kind of did even to the very end, except for he didn't get to shoot himself.
Right, which I thought that was super cool. Thank you, T'Challa, for stopping that man from just, the living are not done with you yet. Ooh, that was chilling and beautiful.
Yeah, because the demands of justice can't be so trivially set aside. We can't have a society. We can't have a culture if we're going to just allow people to succeed from it. You can't just decide that you're no longer a part of it, which of course reflects back on that core conflict between Cap and Tony, because Cap, you can't embody the virtues of a community while existing outside of that community. That's an impossibility. So it's really interesting to see that. I thought Zemo worked great. I thought it was
he did a really good job. Yeah.
First off, I thought he managed to bring a lot of depth to it. And I like the drive. I'm not terribly enthusiastic about, another character being motivated by a dead family, but again, I like the zeal that he brought to it. You really did buy, or I bought at least, the fact that he was dangerous.
And see, that was the thing that got me, was that it was, okay, so so far in all of our films, we've faced off with the Red Skull, we've faced off with Loki, we've faced off with Ultron, and it turns out that the thing that destroyed the Avengers was a dude. Like, just one guy with an agenda.
With not even that much time. It hasn't been that long.
It's been a year. If we're going, basically in, real time, Age of Ultron came out last summer, and so we're looking at, just a year that this guy has had to be able to get, all of the... And maybe, if he got all the information whenever Black Widow put forth all the stuff on Hydra, so a couple of years to at least gather the info, but his family didn't die until last year.
He had no reason to look at it
exactly.
until...
he got a lot done in a year, for sure.
Yeah.
And again, it's just a dude. A soldier, yes.
Which is why he says, I knew that I couldn't take down the Avengers. So many people have tried, but they could take down each other.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting, and it continues the Marvel tradition of having antagonists, primary villains, at least, if not necessarily core antagonists, who aren't just about destruction. They're not just about amassing power. They're not just bad guys. They're trying to accomplish something that's communicative of a core theme, of a core narrative. And that idea of, vengeance. That's such a powerful, such a simple idea. The pursuit of vengeance and the desire to avoid, vengeance in the case of Bucky. That's incredibly rich. And he worked really nicely. I think I would have perhaps been a little less satisfied with him had it not been for that last scene with T'Challa. That landed that story beautifully.
Or a lot less satisfied with the movie had it not been for that scene.
Right,
that
exactly.
Scene really tied a lot together.
Yeah, and when you find out that he's been listening to his wife's voicemail for I guess a year he's been holding on to that voicemail and listening to that. But I really enjoyed Zemo as an antagonist. It was it was interesting at the beginning whenever we've got Crossbones showing up with just an agenda and cursing at Cap, and how dare he call Steve that, and then we just take him out so quickly, and I was like, wait, so literally is the rest of this movie just Tony and Cap are fighting? What are we gonna do?
And I managed to miss the spoilers of people saying that Zemo, apparently that was out there, people knew a little bit about that Zemo was going to be in this movie.
See, I knew that Zemo was going to be in the film. I had no idea who he was.
See, I knew he was a big bad guy.
Okay.
But I managed to miss that spoiler, but because I come from the comic book background, I knew that especially the Marvel method is to have heroes show up, fight each other, and then realize there's a bigger bad guy, and then team up and go fight him. That's the Marvel method, proven over and over again.
Yeah, there's an interesting inversion of that method here where, we team up to fight the bad guy, then the bad guy effortlessly turns the heroes back on each other. It is like a 25-point plan. Each point could crumble. At a moment's
only 5
notice,
of those does he have any control whatsoever over.
Seriously,
He had no way of knowing that the government was going to make people register, this COVID documents were going to happen. He had no way of knowing these things, and yet perfectly falls into place in his hands.
Yeah. But how did he get prosthetics to look like Bucky Barnes without whoever? I guess he went to his black market prosthetics dealer guy who was like, "Oh, you want the Winter Soldier face? That's fine, no big deal."
He just went to the local Target where they had toys of him, but not Natasha. Womp
womp womp.
Okay, that is now canon. Avengers marketing existing within the universe of the Avengers.
Yeah.
I'll take it. Natasha is legitimately annoyed because there are no dolls of her on the shelves at Target.
She's just like, damn it, I went to 8 different Targets.
What did you guys think of the twist of the other Winter Soldiers being dead when they showed up?
I thought that was so cool.
I thought it was brilliant.
Yeah, it was a really powerful moment because it anchors you so directly in Zemo's very personal motivation. It's, I'm not a monster. I'm doing this thing for vengeance. And that's incredibly good.
What's funny to me is I heard a bunch of people complain about it. But this isn't going to be everybody, but the people I heard complain about it were the same ones that were complaining that the airport scene was just eye candy. They were, it's just an eye candy battle. But why weren't those Winter Soldiers live? I'm like, well, you're just wanting an eye candy battle there. That's good writing. They cut that out because it's good writing. They don't need that eye candy battle. They already had one earlier with the important people. They didn't need these extra characters in the battle scene that was unnecessary.
Right.
I'm not terribly sensitive to criticisms of the airport scene. As you guys know, I generally think that you can cut about 20% of every fight sequence. You can generally trim these things down, and you would be left with a better, tighter, more functional film. Because there are so many interweaving narratives through the extended airport sequence, I'm perfectly happy with it. It's not one fight.
Like if you
it's
even cut
7 fights.
Out of that, you lose a full character.
Right, exactly. Yeah, you would just have to pick one that you know you're happy. If you're going to cut anything, I think that, again, it needs to be that car chase sequence, which was super cool. It was really neat being able to see Black Panther like introduce his abilities and just how wicked awesome he is. And the fact that he moves like a cat is crazy and so awesome. Cool. He's done such good body work there. But yeah, if you're going to cut 10% of something, I mean, it needs to be that. Like the second time I saw this movie, I was like, and potty break. I already know what happens here.
Yeah.
And the low key detail of having Cap's shield bear the vibranium scratches throughout the movie. That's such a subtle way of establishing the Black Panther as being badass, as being a serious contender. There's so much good about this film. Where does this rank for you guys in the MCU movies we've had so far?
I was asked this once already, and I'm trying to think my answer's changed. I don't think it has. This is number 1.
It is either, for me, number 1 or a very close second, because I do love Age of Ultron so much. It has very much sentimental value. First of all, because I was introduced to Wanda Maximoff, my favorite character ever. And also because going to see that movie was my first date with Nathan, my fiance. So... if Civil War is not number 1 with a bullet, it's only because it's slightly eked out by Age of Ultron, because I just enjoyed that movie so much, and that one did leave me a mess of weeping and tears. So there's that. Yeah.
I think I'm right there with you, Vinton. I'm astonished to find myself saying this, but I think it's my favorite. I think it's the best one we've had so far. It's the most assured. It inherits everything from the first 2 Cap movies. It unifies it with everything we've had from the entire Iron Man series, or the entire Avengers series. This is the most complete Marvel Universe movie that we've had so far. And to take that's
amazing.
No mean feat. Just unifying those stories and making them work together, that's amazing. To do that and to introduce Black Panther and to make Spider-Man work this well, I just have to take my hats off to Marcus and McFeely, because it's just an astonishing
It really is just, I mean, it is, there's a reason why it is currently the number 1 film in the world. Yeah. Several reasons. But yeah, it really is absolutely. I mean, like, you know, just you saying that, like, we have 8 years of films that this movie is supposed to be tying together. And again, it would be really interesting to find that one person on the planet who didn't watch any other Marvel movies but decided to go see this one. It really is just an absolute accomplishment to be able, that the movie is so good and tying, you know, all of these different disparate things together and making it work as well as it did. It's ridiculous.
So we are bringing this, like tying this together and bringing it to an end, but I just realized we didn't actually talk about Ant-Man. And I need to talk about Ant-Man because I really enjoyed him in this movie. I liked him a lot, but I also enjoyed the Ant-Man movie. And I know I think both of you were a little bit more critical on that. So I want to hear your opinions on him in this movie.
Yeah, I need to watch the Ant-Man movie again because I did not realize that it was... Okay, because the first time I sat down to watch Ant-Man, I was like, it's another Marvel movie. I'm waiting for my formula. It's going to go through. It's going to be great, whatever. And it was something totally different. Yeah. And I walked out going... I don't really know what I just watched, but I think it was dumb. Was it dumb? I don't know, but I didn't take the time to watch it again. So now I'm really interested in seeing it one more time. I think most of the time I was just like, Bobby Newport, what are you doing there? Like, get down.
It had problems. I'm not going to say it didn't have problems.
Right.
But I enjoyed it. It was fun.
But yeah, seeing Scott Lang in this film, he was really funny. He was really fun to watch. Yeah. Whenever he gets introduced to Cap and he's just like, he grabs his shoulders. He just
starts feeling his shoulders.
Yeah.
Wow.
You're Captain America. You're great. And he turns over to Wanda. I know who you are too. You're great too. And she just makes that face.
I'm absolutely right there with you, sir. You took the words out of my mouth. We're in exactly the same position. And I can speak on Lonnie's behalf too. She too didn't like Ant-Man at all when we first watched it. We are now going to go back. I think we might look at the time. We might even be watching it this afternoon. I'm not sure, but we're going to go back and watch it again because he really does work in this context. And it's not just the goofy stuff, though the goofy stuff works. He is genuinely funny. but he's also authentically heroic. They give us great perspectives on his powers and his abilities. They make the argument that Ant-Man can stand next to Cap, can stand next to Black Panther, and really hold his own, which is great. Sarah, I know that Vinton and I were probably expecting this. I'm not sure if you were. What did you think of the giant man moment?
It was amazing because it gave us Spider-Man's reaction, which is one of my favorites in the whole thing. Whenever we get Giant Man to appear in poor 15-year-old Peter Parker, just like, holy shit! It was so incredible. And then Tony being like, okay, does anybody on our side have any mystical, magical powers that they've been waiting to show up until like just now? It was great. It was an excellent, I loved it. I love that he was able to really kind of turn the tide on that fight for that. And then, oh my gosh, all of the jokes with Peter being like, hey, have you guys seen that really old movie, Empire Strikes Back? Jesus, Tony, how old is this kid? I didn't carbon date him. He's on the young side.
It's so good. It's so good.
Yeah.
To make all of that comedy work in the midst of this action sequence that is also compelling and not, just confounding. Mm-hmm. I think there's one sequence, the shots that we get of Natasha right in the open. When she slides up on the motorcycle and takes out like 17 guys because that's the thing that she does.
Yeah.
So cool.
The handheld camera work there is like a little choppy. That is the only point in the entire movie that I thought the action was in any way obscured. Mm-hmm. The rest of it I thought was functional, was emotionally connected.
Yeah.
It was kinetic. I can't say enough good things about this film. Yeah. And that's on top of like these, structural criticisms, these narrative criticisms, the criticisms about the sidelining of the female characters, the criticisms about the shift in focus. I think all of those criticisms are legitimate, but in every case, it's not the case that either the writers or the directors screwed it up.
Yeah.
They just made a different choice.
Right. And it's really frustrating, especially knowing that we sideline Natasha the way that we do, because we watch her through this whole film having to herself go through this argument, which one is right? Like, do we need to be for the Accords or against the Accords? And you can see it every time she's talking with Tony, every time she's talking with Steve, and how interesting it could have been for her to also be in that bunker in Moscow when we find out what Bucky did to Tony's parents, and when we've got that fight between those three guys, like what Natasha would have to do. I mean, again, her line, it's more important for us to stay together than how we stay together, says to me so much about her character. And to see her friends fighting the way like she and Steve have like this really close camaraderie, and then like she and Tony now having to kind of like the whole thing wherever he's like, I'm sorry, did you just agree with me? Oh, I want to take it back, and all of that, like just their interactions with each other. And I don't know if I don't think that it would have been too ambitious to maybe have her there also, because it's just as big. She was in Iron Man 2 is when we first get introduced to her, and that was 2009, something like that.
A while back.
So we've had her for a long time, several hair changes, many outfit changes, but I feel like this conversation about do we keep the Avengers together? Do we split us up? Or do we fall under government control? Do we do our own thing? Is just as much Natasha's problem as it is Tony's or Steve's.
For the character who has struggled more with loyalty and belonging than any other. And on the other side of that, we've got Hawkeye, who was out of the first Avengers movie because, hey, why was that? Oh, that's right. He was mind controlled by the big bad.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like he could have had some perspective to offer on Bucky's whole situation.
Right. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. What a huge misstep.
Some crunch there. We could have had some conversation there, but we want to focus it in. We want to tighten that focus so that we have our three characters, our three actors in the broader sense, present there in that final showdown.
Yeah.
But again, that's a choice. The final showdown works. Yeah. If not for the final showdown, we don't get So Was I. We don't get I Could Do This All Day. We don't get that. Just the quality, the tone of the melodrama there at the end is just stunning.
Did you guys? How did you guys feel whenever Steve, in a rage, is on top of Tony, rips off his mask, and then jams his shield down? Were you guys scared at all about?
I wasn't. I think at least from the comic books, if not from the movies, know who Captain America is and know that he wasn't going to do that. He was just trying to put him out of commission so he could end the fight.
Right.
But there was that tension there of like, oh, could they go that direction?
Right. I didn't think that he was going to kill Tony. I thought he might smash him in the face with the shield. I didn't know. I mean, like, he was pretty pissed off at that point. That's
another, continuity detail, though, because if you didn't watch Iron Man 3... you would be led to expect that smashing his arc reactor would kill him.
Yeah, we were talking about that because we all forgot. Like, we were like, wait, doesn't that kill Tony? And we were like, well, I guess not, because he's alive at the end of the movie. So
that's the end of the first Iron Man trilogy, is him making his peace with that. So I'm actually really excited that they've just been talking this week. I don't think it's on the slate yet, but they've been talking this week about Iron Man 4. I think that's going to function as the natural terminus of his story arc here too.
Right.
I'm really looking forward to that.
I'm actually really looking forward to, I don't know if you guys have heard this. I heard a rumor, quote unquote. I'm going to say rumor because I haven't confirmed it myself, but from what I've heard, it's confirmed by Kevin Feige. It's not on the slate either, but he said when he was asked, are we ever going to get a Black Widow movie? He's like, actually, we're working on it right now.
Oh, please.
And I don't think he meant like they're filming it right now. I think he meant that they're in the process of like finding people and putting that together right
I don't
now.
know why they haven't. Literally everyone on the planet wants it. Like, everyone will go see this movie.
I'm at least hopeful that they're listening because someone told me, like, I think 4 different people told me that he had said that in an interview recently after the movie came out.
There's absolutely no reason not to at this point.
Yeah, the only reason that I wouldn't go and see a Black Widow movie on the day that it is released is if a Wanda Maximoff movie was opening on the same day at the same time. That's pretty much the only thing that would hold me back.
Oh my gosh, a Wanda and Natasha buddy cop movie?
It's always, buddy cop is the genre that works for everyone.
Yep. I really want to see.
Yeah, I gotta go. I gotta write like a lot of fan fiction. I'll be back. I'm sorry.
I really want to see, and it's not on the slate, and it's probably never going to happen. Whatever, we'll see. I really want to see a Scarlet Witch Vision movie, like them together.
Oh my gosh, it would be so good.
Movie.
Yeah.
Particularly with what we're going through with Vision now and his emerging humanity, and if, presumably the Mind Stone is going to be pivotal to the Infinity War that we're getting soon.
You would think so. I feel like the Gauntlet's not complete without it, so...
Right. True. Vision's going to have to come out the other side of that movie fundamentally different. And that's going to be really interesting.
My brother raised an interesting question, which is, what happens to Vision when Thanos rips out the Mind Gem to put into his glove?
Because if that is all that's sustaining him, if that was what made the Ultron experiment possible, then we might be looking at the first high-profile loss for the Avengers.
Oh, that'll be kill Vision.
Well, if Vision dies, I don't know. Is there like a 5% chance we'll get Jarvis back? I mean, I like Friday and all, but fine. Friday's no Jarvis.
No, Friday is no Jarvis. Okay, well, let's go ahead and talk about just really quick. I think that we've all said my favorite part like 18 times, but what was your favorite part of this film, or a couple of like just your absolute favorite moments, character beats, sequences, whatever, and then maybe we'll go ahead and start wrapping up.
Well, I was going to say Spidey, but I'll let Vinton take
Spider-Man.
Yeah, and I'll take T'Challa then. I'll take the Black Panther stuff.
I'll let you take that one then because I kind of want that one too. So we'll share.
Great.
Okay, yeah, and everybody knows that mine is Wanda. So wow, that was a lot shorter than I thought. We'll see you guys next month. Bye and have a good day. Hey, so actually, can either of you explain to me the second end credit sequence that we have with Peter back at home talking to May about, there was this guy Steve and this huge guy, he hit me, blah blah blah, and then he's got that weird Jarvis Spider-Man stuff. Like, what is that? Anything specific, or is that just showing Stark gave him this super cool tech?
I don't think it's showing like anything specific story-wise. It's just showing the tech. But I mean, it is a callback because in the comics he used to have like a spotlight with his like face, like that cartoonish looking spider face with the eyes that he would like shine on villains. It was like his little bat signal type thing, but he would use it for himself, like shine it on villains and do things like that. It was just a goofy thing that he did. There wasn't ever a story moment for it.
That's
but
really
if you notice, when he puts it up in the movie, there's like all these options around the side. It looks like a computer screen. I think it was Stark's way of going, hey, you have all that retro gear. Here's a real computer, kid. You're a genius. You need something to work with.
What did you guys think of Spidey's suit? I know we talked about it a little bit when we saw it in the trailer, but like now seeing it in action.
Loved it.
It was so good.
Those eyes were perfect.
Loved the eyes were great. Yeah, just his movement and fluidity completely different from any of the other characters, completely different from Black Panther's, completely unique unto himself. It's just so good. This is, I don't know, maybe the only reason I'm a little cautious about looking forward to the Spider-Man movie is I'm not sure that they can live up to this vision of Spider-Man. I'm not sure that they can do this for 2 hours. He's just great. As I said, back when we were first talking about Civil War, my Spidey is tech genius Spidey. The reason that he has web shooters, the reason that he can do the things that he does is because he's this smart. He is almost a Stark level intellect. I love that we've united them. I love that they share this common language.
I love that he calls him Mr. Stark just the whole time. Like, I really got to impress Mr. Stark.
I got to impress Mr. Stark.
He's just great. So I can't wait to see how that plays out. I'm confident about it. I'm really hopeful that we're going to see this character developed. And I'm hoping that the fact that it's called Homecoming is my one thread. That's my thin thread of spider silk that's making me hope that it's not an origin story.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
Yeah, those eyes are perfect. They give him they explain why he emotes in the mask so well, whereas you have that in the comics, you can't really put that in the movie, but now you can.
Yeah.
And I was really excited about that. I like the scene where Stark pulls out the whiffle. He's like, "This is what I'm impressed about. Where'd you buy this stuff?" He's like, I made it. I really like that part. But I had heard recently that they actually had talked about they were gonna give him organic web shooters, and I was gonna be so angry if that had happened. I got mad just hearing that they thought about it. I was like, "How dare you!"
I've made my peace with that now after years and years and years of
I will never. But they did go with it, and the reason they gave behind deciding to go with the mechanical ones was to show off how much of a genius he was.
Right.
And I think that's perfect. That worked really well.
That's much smarter. Yeah, I totally think that. Yep. Okay.
Yeah, I could see Spidey and Ant-Man having a great movie
Oh,
together,
yeah.
You know?
The bug team.
Yeah.
The
Team
Insect
Bug.
Avengers.
Hashtag Team Bug.
Oh, Buggy Cops.
You went there.
And that's the note on which we conclude this week's podcast, I think.
Yep, that's the end. That's where we stop. Is that the bit? No. Okay.
Cap and Iron Man walk into a bar and
So Cap and Iron Man walk into a bar, and Cap looks over to Tony and says, "Superman's better." And Tony goes, "No, Batman's better." And then Civil War happened.
Is your mom's name Martha?
My best friend's name is James. Everything is okay.
High five. Still
High
frame over
five.
the closing credits.
Yes. Well, Don't You Forget About Me plays in the background.
Thinking that same thing. There you go.
All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for listening, and we will see you next month talking about Miss Marvel and Sailor Moon, and it's going to be an excellent episode, as always, and just a ton of fun. I'm Sarah Cade.
I'm Vinton Bayne, and shameless plug, check out my comics podcast, Read Brave Comics, if you like this discussion and want more of things like this.
And I'm Alastair Stephens, and my shameless plug is go and check out Vinton's podcast, Read Brave Comics. It's really good, you guys.
I'll put it in the show notes. Awesome. All right.
Until next month.
Excelsior!
Oh, I like that. That was
a good, that's a good bit. That was great. Everyone gets to trade.
I think you guys should start.
Cool. I'll start.
Sarah Cade is the master of starting.
It's true. It's always like the outros that I'm super bad at.
I like outros.
Okay, good.
Oh, never mind. I thought the video froze up for a second, which it did, but it went right back as soon as I was about to say something.
Uh-oh. All right. Fingers crossed.
We all have fear now.
Slight glitch.
We're so scared. Okay.
I was born scared.
What? Stop. I have to do the intro.
This is all going into the final thing. I don't know what I'm saying. You're going to probably be editing.
I'll put it at the end. It'll be fine. People love it.
This has been a Graphomania production in association with Common Room Radio and Storywonk. Thank you to Sarah Cade, who edited the episode you just heard. If you would like to hear more podcasts, go to storywonk.com, commonroomradio.com, or graphocast.com, graphocast.com.